Okay, Joseph Grima, Artistic Director for Matera 2019. I wanted to ask you and talk to you about the final dossier, which was presented, I think, about 10 days ago, more or less.
More or less.
And you've had something like over 2,000 downloads already. First of all, I want you to tell me a little bit about what it was like preparing that final dossier. Was it difficult? Is it very different from the first and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I always think that if an operation like that goes too smoothly, then there's something wrong. It means that you're not kind of giving everything that you've got. So, yeah, there are a few all-nighters, a kind of last-minute rush to get it out. But I think that was only due to the fact that everybody who was involved really gave it everything they had and wouldn't let one little thing past. So, yeah, it was tough, but it was worth it.
I mean, is it longer than the last one? Is it shorter? What are the main differences?
The commission imposes a lot of constraints, so everything is almost down to the word. You have prescribed lengths, prescribed typefaces, prescribed size of the typefaces, prescribed number of pages, and so on. So we had to really operate within some very strict guidelines, and that's what made it challenging, but also I think what made it all the stronger in the end, because in the end we had to really distill all of the concepts and ideas down to the most essential form. And with respect to the previous document, it's basically an extension. It builds on the foundations of the first document. Largely it proposes the same ideas with a greater degree of refinement and solidity, and kind of builds a lot on the advancement of those ideas. Some things have changed. For example, the slogan, which wasn't presented at all in the first issue, has now been defined and presented. So a lot of it is in support of that, and why this slogan really distills the essence of this candidature.
Does that mean that visibly, just aesthetics, is it very similar to the other dossiers?
I think we've only seen one of the other dossiers of other cities, which is Perugia, which is also incredibly beautiful but quite different. I think it's also very different from the first one, because we were working with a really brilliant young graphic designer from Matera, Luisa Lapacciana, who did an amazing, fantastic job, really, really beautiful. And there were also some really beautiful details about how it was put together. It had a fly leaf on it with a big collage by Mario Cresci, with on the inside of which was thousands and thousands of names of everybody who was involved in the process of putting this candidature together. It had hand-stitched binding on the back, the copies that went to Rome. So there are many really beautiful details about it. It's really a work of art in itself.
And I think it was one of the longer dossiers compared to the other cities.
Well, the actual length is fixed. Everybody has to basically come in at the same, more or less, 110 pages. Others, there were about 10 or 15 pages that you could play with, that could either be attached it could be a sort of attachment, or you could just build them in to the full length, which is what we did. But yeah, no, I think it's more than the actual length of it, because we could have the biggest challenge was actually not writing 110 pages. It was cramming everything we wanted to say into 110 pages. So it would have actually been a lot easier to write probably 1,000 or 1,200, but of course nobody would have read it. So there are reasons why they ask for 110.
And which parts were you more involved with? I understand you weren't involved in every single part, but more in a couple of parts.
Yeah, it was really a team effort of a lot of people. Paolo Verri, of course, the director, Rossella Tarantino, Ilaria Dauria as a general coordinator, and Agostino Ritano, Chris Torch, Alessandro Bollo, all sorts of different people contributed to it. So it was a really choral effort to put it together. The part that I was most involved in with Chris, Agostino and Ilaria was the cultural program, which was about 40% of the overall book, and it kind of outlined what the ideas and principles, and then materially what we actually plan to do in 2019 and in the years up until 2019.
It's an obvious question. Obviously lots of us have read it, but tell us briefly, what are you going to do? What are the plans in the run-up and then for that final year?
Well, I mean, it's a very, obviously, as one expects from a European capital of culture, it's a very complex and articulate program with over 100 different events. But I think and of course there are all the things that one would expect from a cultural program, from concerts to exhibitions to theatre performances, site-specific interventions, art exhibitions. But there are a couple of things that I think really set it apart in terms of the ambition of the program. The first is to really transform the Sassi that we're sitting in now into a sort of live amphitheatre where there are continually things happening, there are continually things going on, but that don't involve actually permanently transforming the Sassi into some sort of mega architectural theatre or anything very heavy-handed. It's much more composed of small interventions that come and go and leave a trace, and things a little bit like what we can see behind us, the Radio 3 structure there on that stage. I think the Sassi really lend themselves, they're full of these little piazze that are natural amphitheatres in a way. So our idea is to to really use the Sassi and to make them into something that's live and active and inhabited. And one really beautiful example is we're working with Teatro San Carlo in Napoli to bring Cavalleria Rusticana. Teatro San Carlo is the oldest theatre in Europe, and they will collaborate with us to bring Cavalleria Rusticana to the Sassi, using the apartments and the homes of inhabitants of the Sassi as the spalti, as not the stage, not the backstage, the seating, the stalls. Exactly, that was the word that was escaping me, and so the Sassi themselves, open air space will be the stage, and the homes of people will be the stalls, and I think it's very emblematic of our general approach to the Sassi. We don't need big, heavy-handed, expensive architectural interventions. The Sassi are already remarkable places they are, and we have to remember that 2019 sounds like a very long time away, like 5 years away, but it's a small blip in the millenary history of Matera, and so we also need to think about what is worth in the long run having here. What do we actually need? And in many ways, I think the Sassi, that what we need is already here. It already exists. So why build anything more?
Well, let's hope that everything goes well and the dossier is the best of the group. Thanks.